Good evening and welcome to episode 6 of Will You Review My CV? I'm your host, Alan Wozni, and this evening or today, I want to outline the key observations and findings from a LinkedIn article I published or posted on 26th of September in 2019. The article was titled, How Can an Accountant Help an Engineer? In August 2018, I subscribed to the LinkedIn Career Advice Forum. And from time to time, LinkedIn they were sending notifications for saying you are seen as an expert in your field, and a link to two or three individuals that submitted their query to the LinkedIn portal would come to me, and quite often, or they would come to my feed, and I'd get, I think, a week or so to respond. Quite often, the submissions were an accountant or a finance type, which is typical to my degree or pedigree as a CPA or a chartered accountant from Canada. So, but in parallel, I would often receive many LinkedIn connection requests and direct emails from individuals that had an engineering background, mechanical, electrical, or plumb, even HVAC specialists, engineers, construction engineers, construction managers. And they would request if I could review their CV and refer them to any individual jobs within my net for any individuals or available jobs in my network. Now, I believe such queries from engineers and technical staff, they came from my former role as a CFO of Qatar Solar Technologies. I'd worked there for 33 months. There was a significant amount of money spent on construction, all kinds of electrical, the trenches, the plumbing, the piping, the HVAC, which is the heating and ventilation, and the gosh, I can remember some of the amount the some of the contracts that were spent in some of the rooms, massive rooms, but the trenches were pretty cool because they were at the amount of wiring that went into the trenches. But anyway, so that was my role as a CFO. So it wasn't surprising that engineers and so forth thought they could get me to funnel their CV over. But prior to volunteering for the LinkedIn Career Advice program, more often than not, I would dismiss such appeals for job search appeals, such as on the basis that as a CFO, I was not able to assist in their job search. I didn't see that link other than passing on their CV or resume over to the HR department. And you know, on the surface, it's a reasonable assumption to say that a CFO can't help the engineers or the operations people find a job. But indirectly, I could pass their CV to the technical staff I know, or to the HR team or operations people, and say, "Here you go." But if I don't know, I've said this before. I've said this on the previous. I rarely do I refer somebody if I've never worked for them or don't know any of their background. So blindly or cold emailing me and requesting that CV to pass it on, I just wouldn't do it. And unless I just said, "Oh, here's a potential candidate." But again, it's indirectly. But in fact, the former CFO, David, I can't remember his last name, but David was the former CFO of Qatar Solar, and we had a handover. We had a transition period, and he was a chemistry major in the UK, and then he went into accounting profession after he graduated from chemistry, and he worked for BP, British Petroleum, for many years. And David said to me, he'd worked for 4 years as the CFO of Qatar Solar before I went in. And even though his education and professional background, working for British Petroleum on major chemical petroleum project, massive projects with BP, he said those skills were not necessary for, they provided him with the necessary skills. He probably could evaluate a good number of the technical staff that were hired by Qatar Solar. But I recall a discussion. He said during my transition that when he indicated senior management of Qatar Solar had previously demanded that he stay in his lane and let the HR, human resources, and operations teams handle the hiring, when he recommended just one former BP colleague for a position or a vacant technical role, which he said the guy 90% would have filled that role. Stay in your lane. That's a common response. A common response from non-accounting professionals when the CFO and members of the finance team seek to get involved in the affairs of various departments, not just the operations teams, the HR, sales and marketing, procurement, supply chain, legal, IT, and other non-technical aspects of running the business. Certainly, a bookkeeper getting involved with operations was taboo. Telling me to stay in my lane, I was told it was very common during my time in the Middle East. I worked 10 years in the Middle East. And certainly in my time working in Russia, a couple of years in Russia, and 5 years in Kazakhstan, and 5 years in Turkey, that often the operations team from oil and gas and the mining companies would just stay in your lane if it didn't do with the numbers. Those words of wisdom work well when you're driving a car or maybe your doctor performing surgery. But if Marvel had stayed in its lane and just stayed with comic books, we would not we wouldn't have Captain American movies, the Avengers and Iron Man uh, in Hollywood with the big movie productions. Peeling back the onion layer. The arrival of the internet era, where information is readily available. You can learn how to change the oil in your car, unlock your mobile phone after 49 failed attempts. Of course, I'm not suggesting that after watching a 5-minute YouTube video, it'll make me qualified to install insulation on pipes that need to support keeping water cold or hot, depending on the temperatures. If it's cooling, then they got to be minus 100 degrees Celsius. And I'm just looking at when the outside temperature is 49, 50 degrees in Qatar, in the Middle East. I know that. I know my limits. What the internet has taught me is the power of social media does not require third party consent to transfer my knowledge, my awareness, and my experience using LinkedIn to non accountants. In my grade, I'm going back to grade 3, but I think the grade 3 science class provides a perfect analogy to the onion layer. The microscope revealed the wonders of viewing the multiple cells that existed in a single layer of an onion. We inject. I remember this. We injected dye into the cell, and you could see the various single cells. It was pretty cool. The various features of the single cell. Imagine how many cells exist within the multiple layers of a single onion. So I looked at that from pulling back the layers of the onion in job search, because there's virtually any function, whether it's in functional area, discipline, HR manager, HR marketing, accounting, any sector, region, location. LinkedIn is really there for everyone for that, for the to peel back the onion layer. It may look like on the surface it's only for accountants or certain job seekers, but it really works. So pulling back that strata or the internet, the single celled amoeba. I wrote that, the single celled amoeba. If you're looking just for the onion layer, the one looks like there's not much there, but once you pull it back, there's a LinkedIn search algorithm itself, which is pretty sophisticated. It's been around for I think 2002, since early 2000s. The LinkedIn follow feature, they suggest you follow certain people. The Google search, it's outside of LinkedIn. You can use company newsletter publications, industry investment news feeds, such as I subscribe to Strictly VC and TechCrunch and VentureBeat and Crunchbase. They're not just accounting or venture capital. They're technical. There's construction companies in there as well that get funding, and then there's other social media. So one of these cells on their own in isolation may not be effective in conducting an employment search. But as you peel back that onion layer and you add these things together, you collate the data in a cohesive pattern. And as each tier, you save the information from the prior level. That can give you enough information to provide an effective job search, no matter what your career is. So I call that going from the microscope to the macroscope. So every layer, the further you drill down, you're going to get very meta, very detailed. But as you pull that together, you get a very good macro view of your job for your job search. So I said it here: engineer digging ditches. Many people are probably familiar with that term. And it's easy for an accountant to dismiss the engineer when it comes to, go ahead, you're digging ditches, sorry. But when accountants graduate when an accountant graduates from university, I didn't, I'm thinking here in Calgary, I didn't ride around on a horse in the last day of school. I didn't adhere to a special code, which at least not when I was aware, not that I'm aware of. Accounting graduates do not receive a nondescript metal ring upon graduation. I think it goes on the right hand. Um, Engineers are generally hired to perform complex mechanical, electrical, or civil tasks, and accountants focus on the bookkeeping and the financial reporting. My practical experience working with engineers, whether it was in the Middle East or whether it's in Russia or Kazakhstan on oil and gas or mining or construction or industrial projects or companies, generally focused on queries about invoices where what are the, what's necessary to be paid, why certain contracts were hired for certain tasks, and why certain activities were included in the budgeting or the forecasts that I would have to talk to the engineers about. The engineers or other operations personnel provided explanations for the accountants or the auditors, and we went away. That harmony between the operations departments and engineering or and accounting departments kind of exists around the globe and rarely changes until both the accountants and engineers find themselves in the same spot, seeking alternate employment, job loss, or whatever. Today's market would confirm we're all sitting in that pool, accountants and engineers. So accountants will ask the same question: can you review my CV? Engineers will ask, can you review my CV? Can you refer me to anyone in your network? It works both ways. Give each a shovel. Give the engineer a shovel. Give the accountant a shovel, and they can try to work and dig their way out of unemployment. So from that, if an engineer is digging ditches, I'm digging a ditch as an accountant. What can I teach that engineer? Throw away the shovel, and let's consider how to get back up on the horse and give them some tools to find the engineer a job. So I'm going to a practical example. In February 2019, a young MEP engineer residing in Dubai reached out to me to connect on LinkedIn. Once I accepted his LinkedIn connection request, he then politely requested my assistance in his endeavor to make a job change. First, you're probably like me and wondering does an MEP stand for? Google revealed that this acronym refers to the mechanical, engineering, and plumbing expert. So my initial response back in February 2019 really failed to focus on the experience of that young man, and simply outlined what I had done. And 2017, 2018, I found tech, and I remember it was a one-page, probably 1,200 characters. Do what I did. I pivoted into technology, emerging tech, and you'll get excited about it too. But that that does, tech does not. That I we came to realize that recommendation, 90% or more people out there don't don't have the same passion for tech as I have. That I started in 2017, 2018, and to make that pivot like I did. It's not an easy pivot. I was 52 at the time, 55 now. What I did not realize is that job seekers don't share that passion. They just want a job. So my newfound passion isn't shared by a lot of people. In fact, my daughter Sophie, she made it clear when she was selecting. This was in grade 9. She was looking. This was a couple years ago, back in 2019. At that time, just around the time I wrote this article, she made it clear that when she was selected, it was the ICT or computer class. It was the options, and I said, for basic. It was for basic coding. I said, Sophie, you should get in. You should take that class. It'd be great. Yeah, no, but I don't know. And then I said, well, look, you play Fortnite, you play Minecraft for you played Minecraft religiously when we lived in the Middle East. And you're on all the devices, or you're always constantly on your device on Snapchat, Instagram. She turned over and she looked at me, she goes, no, but coding's boring, Dad. That's when it hit me. That's when it hit me that the job seekers, They won't share that passion. Likely, highly likely, maybe 97% of them will not share my passion. So I look back, and this is the time. So I look back and I reevaluated not only for this job seeker, but many. But this one created the article, "How does an accountant help an engineer?" So I went back from my February advice and said, and I did a redo. I did a reconnected in September 2019 and summarized how his job efforts I could help him improve his job efforts by focusing on four key elements: Middle East construction and engineering firms, Middle East recruiting firms, compiling relevant contact lists, and then conducting a targeted outreach on LinkedIn. So this is that could be a template for anybody. But as an engineer, I targeted the construction and engineering firms, which also I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but also go into the facilities management of those same construction plants or the construction jobs. The Middle East and construction and industrial plants. I spent 10 years in the Middle East from August 2009 to June 2019. The region will continue in construction for many years to come. I mean, Saudi's just ramping things up. There's a Red Sea development, and even in Dubai. I mean, they had a little bit of hiccup with the pandemic, but as I understand, they're picking up. Schools are building again, and expats are moving back in. Experienced engineering folks need to research which projects are planned or in progress related to schools, villas, malls, hotels, office towers, industrial plants, desalinization plants, GTL or gas to liquids, refineries, petrochemical, clean tech, green tech, renewables. There's all kinds of that, massive scale in the Middle East. This could work elsewhere, but I think Middle East is a real concentration. Engineers need to create awareness of their skills. They need to draw attention. They need to somehow figure out how to create awareness or get people's attention for their skills for companies that serve such projects. And I have a list here as a sample: Wood Group, Kentech, Arab Tech, CH2M or CH2ML Hill, Mott McDonald, Turner Townsend, Roberts Construction, Lewis Berger, Lamprow, SNC Lavalin. I know they're Canadian, but they're also in the Middle East. Dulsco, WSP, ABB. That's the Swiss ABB, Asia Brown Boveri, big construction company. KBR, Kellogg Brown Root or KBR, Parsons, ACOM, Petrotech, Petrofac. This is not a complete list. Google search, LinkedIn search will definitely reveal more companies that give names of similar companies in the region. There's just the landscape is dotted with these kind of companies. Um, the individual may already have a list of his own. He may have a list already. This is the guide. Facilities management, FM. Think of what happens when they commission the plant, the school, the desalinization plant, the chemical plant, the shopping malls. When it's commissioned, ready to use, and they're starting to use it, the office buildings. I mean, come on, that tower, uh, that tower alone. What is it? The Burj Dubai or the Burj? It's a massive tower, right? I don't know how many floors. 150 floors. They have probably 20,000 people at any given point working if there's on the building itself while it's in facilities management, not construction. Maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it's 15,000, but the facility, it's massive, right? The maintenance of those towers, the maintenance of the plants, they'll go on for 25 years. So often what happens is the EPCs or the engineering procurement construction companies that build those massive projects, they just switch over. Their personnel switch over. They have a division, maybe a separate department called facilities management, FM. The FM services will last for 25 years. You get that contract, and they need the engineers. They need they need, depending on what the type of building or construction plant it is, they're going to need those same engineers to work on the facilities management for the next 25 years. So that's something to think about. You've got a massive amount of companies servicing the construction and commissioning of these plants and hotels and malls and schools. And then in the next 25 years, they just switch over to facilities management. Middle East recruiting firms. Yeah, I mean, they're everywhere. The Indeeds and the Monsters and the Yahoos, the recruiting, all they're everywhere. But when you get into specific engineer types, Middle East recruiting firms, they're very specific because they're geared to that. EPCs, those construction contractors, the FM, they're geared to that. So they're more specialized. Brunel, BWP Limited, Digby Morris, Energy Jobline, 5TS, Gulf Talent, Manpower Group, Maxim Recruitment, PSR International. Those are, I have I've also included the website links. So I gave to the individual, I gave him the website links to those recruiters. I just recommend it. Set up your job search agents for those different companies, in addition to all the usuals, the Manpower, or not Manpower, the Monster.com, and the usuals. But Google and LinkedIn will give you others, other additional company names is not a complete list. List of contacts, construction, engineering, facilities, management firms. From the list that I've given him above, I recommended that he should consider, as an MEP manager, engineer, should consider doing the following. Make a list in Excel of all of the companies in each country in the Middle East. Think UAE or United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Egypt, Morocco, Jordan. They tend to have affiliates because of the Arab language. They tend to have affiliates in all of those countries. So if someone has Arabic language on top of all of this, they're golden. I mean, they're almost golden, very well respected. Or they're lucrative. Their skill sets are really tied to covering all those countries in the Middle East. I recommend follow them on LinkedIn. Subscribe to the company newsletter. I've said this before in past episodes. Look for articles, news articles, to find out what projects that they're working on, or existing projects today or in the future. This stuff is Google. You can find so much about these companies. It's important to get familiar with the names of the projects so that if you are in the interview and you are talking to them, I don't care what level you are, if you're aware of what they're doing in the Middle East, that'll just make just make you better, your chances in the interview much better. Make a list of all the regional projects that they come across in the research. And I mentioned earlier the Red Sea Development Project. I don't even know. That was 2 years ago. I don't know where that's at now, but that's a major project. It's pretty much, if you go to that, there's a point in the Red Sea, you can see across Israel and Saudi, and maybe it's not quite Israel, but it's, there's just nothing out there. And they were going to make, I think they even made a movie on that. They make movies on these things. They're just going to build another city, major port, called the Red Sea Development Project. So for each company and project, I always recommend use LinkedIn to make a list of the different personnel that in those companies. So in this case, because there's an individual in construction or he's an MEP manager, first of all, start with the managing director. Who's managing that company? Who's the managing director? Who's the construction manager? Who's the MEP manager? Who's above you that you're looking for? Who are electrical engineers? Who's the HR manager for that company? Who's the operations manager for that company? So there's a managing director, but there's someone in the operational side as well. Who's the contracts manager? Contracts manager. He looks at, he or she, mostly guys. There's a lot of guys. I mean, it's mostly male dominated in the Middle East. The contracts manager sees everything. Everyone talks to the contracts manager. He was the busiest person at Qatar Solar. The contracts manager was the busiest person, and he knew everything was going on that plant in Qatar Solar. I'm sure it's the same for the other places. This should be a big list. I can't imagine how big this list could get if you take all those companies and all those positions, and the bigger the companies are, the more that list will grow. So when searching such names, you can also look, and I'll show you that. I'm going to share my screen on LinkedIn and show what I mean. Like, people also viewed. There's 4 or 5 people that come up that. LinkedIn does that. The algorithm searches that or provides that all the time. This strategy works for any sector or any industry, warehouse, airport facilities, shipping, freight, hotels, restaurants, oil and gas, shopping malls, facilities management, I already said, sports facilities, all this stuff exists in Dubai and Abu Dhabi in like in just clusters. Like it's insane. I'm not unlike North America. North America is more spread out in that regard. Europe, very isolated. It's not the same. It is not the same. Um, so if, I recommend it. If he reaches out to 500 people and doesn't find a job, go for another 500 more. That's kind of a Gary Vaynerchuk principle. 500 doesn't get you, go to 500. If 1,000 doesn't get it, go to 1,500. List of contacts, MEP engineers, drilling right down. So I recommend he makes a list of the persons having similar experiences to him. MEP manager, that's it. MEP engineer. So the manager's probably above. He's more not entry level, but he's going to work for the MEP manager. Reach out to them directly. Inquire about potential leads or roles within their company. Maybe that individual is more senior than him. Perhaps reach out to them to see if they would agree to mentor him on his job search, provide guidance. Maybe just be someone to talk to as an experienced person. So I want to show the LinkedIn search function from at this time. I typed in the words MEP and I set the location as UAE or United Arab Emirates. Google came up, or not Google, LinkedIn came back under people with the results 44,212. It's a little bit skewed because LinkedIn also shows if someone has in their profile the words MEP, it could be MEP operations manager, it could be head of MEP, it could be director of MEP engineering, it could be MEP for some other acronym, not at all related to microelectronic processing. I don't know, but that'll be in their profile. But it'll particularly my search will be different than his search because he is an engineer. So his feed it'll show him more engineers. Mine will tend to have accountants in there and finance people. So I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to show what this looks like. Okay, so give me LinkedIn. Okay, let's go share that. Okay. So now we're going to share. I'm going to show you. I'm going to type in MEP right up here. Okay, so MEP in people, in jobs, I can go right there. Oh, wait, 444,000. I'm going to go back because this is different. This didn't exist. MEP company. Oh, that's a company. Mechanical and industrial. So you got to be careful because that'll just be a specific company. So you want to go to people, MEP in people. Now, 440,000, the results, that's a global across the globe. So if I go to connections, I don't want my connections. I want this is that you want to mirror what you're going to do. You don't want your connections. You've already probably asked them if they're aware of any jobs. So you're just gonna select the second and third and show the results. Again, this is the globe. 420 it whittles down to 421,000. That tells me I probably have 1,000 people in my thing. So location. Now go to United Arab Emirates, and if you can't see it there, you just type it in and add a location. Show results. So now it's showing me 46,000, not a lot different from when did this 2 years ago. It was 44 and some change. So these are the individuals that are like him or current contract manager MEP. So now managing director MEP contracting in Dubai, Ishab Eid, MEP construction. So you have different. So now Alec. Now Alec was not on my list, but I remember Alec when I was there. Al Futain, construction. See, there's now not only you get the person, but you get their job. Not all of them show this. You might have to click on the next level to see Al Hani Gulf. So there's more names available back to that list I mentioned earlier. There's more names. Damac Properties, another big very big, and in fact, Damac, they're the ones who build it. It was a property that Donald Trump had its name on and for many years ago. I don't know where they're at now, but so Damac's one of those big developers. They build a lot of properties and then they have the commissioning later, the FM side. So that just gives you an exposure. What to do? How do you deal with the 46? One at a time. You go through the 46,000 one at a time and make your list until you get to where you want to be. I just want to go back now to my I don't know if I'm sharing the screen on this, so I'm going to stop sharing. So, the roles kind of mentioned. So the roles I did the search last, and came up with 10, and I gave him from what I did on LinkedIn, and I just gave that individual the 10 top names that I saw, and it was, the names are different today. There's different company, Arenco, Corefly, B6, ACOM, I mentioned earlier, Tiger Contracting. So these names you see them all the time. When you're driving around the Middle East, you'll see these names. It's not as common in Calgary. Maybe Toronto's more construction. You'll see it if you're driving on a construction site. You'll see PCL Construction or the different names. It's all over. They're all over in the Middle East or in Dubai. But this approach will provide, when he goes to the contacts, as I said earlier, he's going to see the individual names, but also who they work for. So it gives him additional companies to look for back to the HR manager and all the different titles. The outreach. The outreach is, this is probably key. So it's one thing to make the list. It's another thing to start the outreach. I'm going to talk about it first, and I'll share my screen to show what I mean how this works. It's a multiple step process that I've used for like the last 3 to 4 years. Prepare a 300 character introduction. Keep it simple to the point. That 300 character introduction is the same you'll use for pretty much every, you just change the name of the company. The importance of this is not everyone, people go on automatic when they accept a LinkedIn connection request. Many don't, many do, and then they don't respond after. So if you just use the 300, if it's called the impersonal LNR, the impersonal connection request, LNR, please add me to your LinkedIn network. How personal is that? I might respond, I might not. Most people don't. That impersonal response is that's just a click in and click and hope. Click, I don't know, throw it on the wall and see what sticks. I prefer to put the benefit. I prefer to draft attention from the get go. Personalized invitation gets their attention better than a LNR. Please add me to your LinkedIn network. Okay. So I'm going to show. So I've written here, and I've written here. Hi, Abbas. This is what I wrote for this. I wrote this for the job seeker, and I took one of the names from the 10 that I wrote about the last one. Abbas Hassan, MEP engineer from Tiger Contracting. Hi, Abbas. I have 6+ years of MEP. This is the candidate. I have 6+ years of MEP engineering experience, including 3+ years in the UAE. And then I said to he should probably list 2 or 3 accomplishments, very short, very concise. I worked on installations of transformers ranging from 30 kVA to 2000 kVA, chillers and pumps from 110 TR to 550 TR. This was from his LinkedIn profile. It's not mine. This isn't mine. This is keen to connect with you and Tiger Contracting for potential role. And then put his name here. And I said here, if you need more characters, because you only have 300, you got to use the word, you got to count those characters. Otherwise, you're going to run out of room. Just remove your name from the end, and they will know your name from the message. They'll get a message. Alan R would like to know. It doesn't say Alan R anymore. It says it says Alan R has sent you the following message, and that's what you get. That's what you get when you do LinkedIn. So let's share the screen, and I want to show exactly what I mean by the 300 character. Going back to my list. So let's go back to LinkedIn. Let's go back to LinkedIn. Okay, I'm going to share that. Okay. So let's go back here. So you see individual names: Abdul, Kadir, Ikam, Ahmad, Muhammad. I don't speak Arabic. I'm familiar with his name. So, but I click on connect here. You can customize this invitation. You can add a note to personalize your invitation to Rami Abu Jabbar. Add a note, and there's your 300 characters right there. Forget about what it says. We know each other from. No, your message is clear. I'm here to connect with you about your company, about you and what I've done and how I can add value to your company. Ignore the premium thing. Ignore all that stuff. I'll tell you about LinkedIn Premium in a second. You put that in the 300 characters, and then you send. I'll cancel that. I'll just cancel that. So let's go back to unsharing my screen. No, sorry, stop sharing. Okay. So I'm going to finalize this thing. You do not need to become a LinkedIn premium member to send a personalized message. In fact, the in-mail, which is what you send to an individual as a member of LinkedIn Premium, it's more like a sales pitch. I used to get messages because I was a CFO, and this is where I learned this. I used to get these messages from Siemens and these major construction companies or manufacturers of industrial plant. They send me an email. I'm like, how'd they know I worked as because they use they pay for that to send sales pitches directly to relevant people in the Middle East or relevant people, relevant jobs. You can pay for that on LinkedIn. But as a job seeker, LinkedIn Premium puts you in almost in the same category. That in-mail looks just like an email and it comes across as a sales pitch. And a lot of people don't, I don't, I tend to ignore those because they're just pitchy. So many people tend to ignore them as well. So I tend to think go for the 300 characters. You'll get a better result, more engagement with people you're seeking to reach out to than just a blanket sales pitch, an in-mail, or the L&R would like to connect, be part of your network. So then the next thing, the next level, when they accept your connection, thank them and request permission to send your CV or your resume, and then confirm the appropriate email address. So again, this is engagement because a lot of people go on, they just accept blindly, and then there's no further engagement after. And I went through that. Trust me, I went through that when I was reaching out for my blockchain project, and people were accepting my LinkedIn. I get excited, real high profile people in the venture capital space, and they'd accept my LinkedIn request. And I got excited and sent them a whole pitch deck and everything, and didn't hear from them. So this is the next level. When they accept your connection, thank them and confirm an appropriate email in which to send my CV. Don't send willy nilly your CV because back to my email when I used to get emails, here's my CV. Can you review my CV? And like, no, it's easy for people to ignore that or just because they have to work. So you can confirm whether the email included in their LinkedIn profile is the appropriate one, or ask them to give you the appropriate one. Some people include their work email address. Most include their Gmail or their personal email address, and some just don't include any contact information at all outside of LinkedIn or maybe Twitter. So use email to send once they agree, then you send your resume or CV relevant and with a relevant cover letter to the contact requests to that individual who's agreed to take your email. Don't just say, I just think don't send it willy nilly. You need to engage the people. You need to get some consent on the second level, third level. So they're just not going to automatically accepting. So I said this, moving to the passing lane. Remember I said I got told to stay in my lane. My lane is helping people now. I come from a family of accountants. My dad was an accountant. Raymond Wozni, professional CGA practice here in Calgary in the 1980s, 70s, and 80s. And I learned how to prepare a tax return. I learned how to do manual accounting, journal entries, general ledger, all that. My sister Lori, who was also now she's a CGA, but she worked in my dad's office summers, weekends. She was a couple years older. She's a couple years older than me. She also toiled away nights and weekends while she was working through, I think it was 10 years. She was working in several accounting roles here in Calgary, and she obtained her, through nights and weekends, she obtained her CGA designation, which then merged with the Chartered Accountant Society to become the CPA designation. So we're in the same profession. That happened while I was overseas, but just think of that. We're accountants. Bookkeeping has always been in my blood. When I stepped out of my lane to learn about emerging technologies, I found a whole new world of tools for job seekers, not just accounting job seekers, but for virtually everyone else. So the hardware store is packed. I found the tools that can help those engineers. So next time an engineer approaches me, the accountant, and asks, will you review my CV? I will ensure that him or her had the proper shovel. Fiskars. Fiskars is a really good name brand. I will make sure they're equipped with all of the required accessories to help him or her to adequately excavate their way out of the ditch of unemployment into a role that they're best suited for. Thanks for watching and stay safe.